You are listening to the Nosy Dragon. I am your dungeon master / innkeeper, Justin. I am joined by my players / patrons, Ben.
Good evening.
And Josh.
Howdy doodah, dandy.
In today's session, we will be talking all about backgrounds, flaws, bonds, and ideals. This episode was made possible in part by Junk Chuggers. More about them later in the episode. Welcome to the Tavern Boys.
I hope you've got something strong, because I am not feeling my best.
I've got this spirit from the West Plains, and it is so strong that there are actually hundreds of year old spirits in the spirit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
They are the spirits of brave and strong warriors.
yeah, be warned. It comes with a pretty hefty existential, so you might not want to mess with that. Hey, one of those my 21st birthday. Tell you what.
Oh man, yeah.
Comes out strong too.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've all had situations like that back in our youths.
But if you want something a little lighter, I've got this fairy dust martini.
Ooh, I'll take that.
Careful, it will float away.
Oh, damn it.
You roll the rim of the martini glass
And like fairy dust.
Yeah, on second thought, I'm already feeling a little lightheaded, so I may skip out
Like
on
in
that
old
one.
West movies, they slide the big cup. You slide it over, and it's floating like a balloon.
Catch it.
Oh, that's good.
All right.
I love it.
So what are we talking about today?
Backgrounds. Backgrounds are important for making a well-backgrounded character.
I would say it's impossible to make a well-backgrounded character. And that's just my take, don't come at me.
What are we building hunchbacks here? Round back? I'm here all night, folks. Okay.
I wish you weren't.
That's fair.
Just kidding. That's funny. But yes, and along with backgrounds, we also have the building blocks for your character that's on your character sheet, your flaws, your bonds, your ideals, and like Justin said, your background.
The often overlooked, but so essential to good roleplay.
Yeah.
So she tells me that all the time.
I think this one is also really important.
Can you imagine?
I think I have a different
I'm
take.
not just a milkman. I'm a milkman who lost his wife tragically to cancer 6 years ago. And I've been searching for love, but not really all in. And
I
when
mean,
I deliver the milk to your house, it fires me up in a way that I haven't felt in years.
at first I just thought it was hot, but now I'm honestly so immersed. Keep going.
But I'm afraid to get too close to you, because I'm afraid my kids will be hurt that I've moved on from their mother.
See, that's the kind of relationship I'm after.
Also, I trust law and order above all things.
My son's a good boy, 13 now, has his own paper route.
Just starts as honest small talk and
I'm
just
just
straight
sitting
up
down playing
exposition.
D&D with my wife, and I'm playing a milkman. she's like a politician.
Oh my god.
Oh my god!
Non-traditional. but
Roll for
exciting.
persuasion. Oh wow!
That's like a skit. It's like, hey honey, you want to do some role play tonight? It's like, and the dragon smites down. It cuts to the bedroom.
Yeah.
And you're shaking your hand off screen, and then it cuts to rolling dice.
The camera's behind you, and he's got his shirt off, and he's and come on,
God.
almost there. Yes. Then it zooms around from the back over the shoulder, and then you can see there's a play mat on the on the bed.
Like a DM screen. He's rolling the dice.
Yeah.
I didn't know I needed this until now. I would love that.
Comedy right there.
Yes,
If you
please.
steal that, you better put us in the credits.
Yep. We need a writing credit on that.
Damn straight.
Yeah.
No,
Okay, so I want to start with flaws, guys. Flaws is my favorite part. I know a lot of people. I was helping
Gasp.
someone make a character for the first time, and we got to flaws, and he didn't want to pick one. And I was just like, dude, I love the flaws. I think the flaws are the most
Yeah.
important integral part. Like, how is your character not not perfect, not good? How what is their not well-rounded areas, their jagged spots, their
Yeah.
uneven and pointy things, the things they suck at, the areas where they could use polish. And I think the best thing about flaws is that that's also character growth direction.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
also think you can adopt flaws along the way. So it's not like, oh, you don't. I don't think you should take away from that what I just said that you can put down a flaw today and then try to get your way out of it. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
you can.
But
you can get a
sometimes
new
it can
flaw. It's
like
okay.
yeah, and I think that's something I don't know that I like where it's like yeah, you can kind of this is your flaw now, but as you go on, that might turn into like, you know, a bond or an ideal and then like it might get traded out for another flaw. But I think it's having your character not be perfect is so important I think in D&D because you know, not only is it a role-playing game, but it's like
Especially
totally
for you,
random.
Josh. You know, you in real
I
life
mess
are
up
perfect.
constantly. Yeah, so it's so
So
hard.
it's nice to
It
play
really helps me
something
get out of
so
my
different.
shell. You know?
I love how
But I
Josh
think,
was
yeah.
about to take that in the completely opposite direction, and then
Just turned it right around.
whipped
Yep.
it around.
That's what we call improv, fellas. It's always saying yes.
And I want you got to do this. I'm forcing you. Got to get out of my tavern.
Oh, boy.
I
Oh,
want you to give me an example of one of your characters that you played with your favorite flaw that they had, and what did that look like in role play?
My favorite flaw. Oof. Um. Well, I really enjoyed when I played this character named Kalo Liberty.
I remember Kalo.
Yes,
Yep.
they were a tiefling warlock. I know, really thinking outside of the box with that one. But I had set him up to be a scholar. You know, the rest of the party was for the most part a little bit more of a brawny bunch. And I really wanted to delve into someone who is like nerdy and awkward and like really focused on a particular field. And so what their flaw was, I searched through the player's handbook, and it was, if I see a demon, rather than while everyone else is running away, I'm up close taking notes. And so I got to like delve into this sort of curiosity that would overtake my character at times and cause me to really
To be correct, to be more accurate here, so that just in case it wasn't, that was an example of your character's flaw, not specifically his only flaw was if he saw a demon.
yes, no,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course.
A demon
It's
or the
more
like,
like-
something dangerous and scary that your average person would run from. He sits down and he observes and takes notes of such
Right.
oddities in the world.
But it was also like in the very inappropriate moment, he would be like, we should study this. Oh, it's so interesting. We gotta get out of here. The boulder's right after us. But look at this marble construction.
I could write a quarter paper on this.
When I grabbed the knocker on the door, it shriveled my hand so much that it looks mummified. More research must be done.
Exactly. Quickly, I can. You hold my book. I can only write with my other hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. It definitely led me to being. I can't even say how many times I went unconscious with that character. In fact, I believe one
Also
time
went down and died.
Yeah.
This guy dropped almost every gun.
it was
Signature move.
yeah.
Yeah.
Face
Yeah.
down.
Was it
Cool.
really?
There it is.
combat?
Watch out, and he's
If
down.
Kalo didn't die.
He's rolling death saves.
Yeah.
But as much as I went down all the time, I loved having that sort of creative fascination with things and putting myself into those
Yeah.
situations. And
That's
because I
fascinating
found
that you
out
played
so
that
much.
as a flaw. I played a character just like that, but I didn't consider that as a flaw. I think I made that his bond or ideal or
interesting.
something. I don't know. He was he wanted to create the monster manual. We talked about this in a previous
Yeah.
episode. And we got attacked by some sort of ghostly, spectery, undead, plasmatic creature.
Right.
And he immediately tried to talk to it and ask it questions, and near the end of the encounter gave it a handshake, and it did a lot of necrotic damage because when you touch them they do necrotic damage. And
Right.
yeah, he was fascinated by it rather than horrified. And
Yeah.
earlier in that same dungeon, there were rattlesnakes, and he was like, "No, no, no, no! This is their natural environment. They've moved into this abandoned prison. Like, we need to get around them." And so, like, we used our clothing and stuff to like throw jackets on top of them so that we could get
Yeah.
around them
Oh
and
my
not
God.
disturb them and such. And
Oh,
so
that's so fun.
Yeah.
we did
But
that kind of stuff.
I like that because I think sometimes I think people get into this trap, but like sometimes it feels like your flaws are gonna like totally betray the character you're building. You know, you're like the super strong barbarian, but you're like you like when you come to flaws, it's like, oh, I'm scared of the, the littlest butterfly or something. But I think it's like sometimes your flaws can be like so like they can really kind of work hand in hand with your bond. So I think
Yeah.
that's like I like Ben's example because I feel like that's a good example of like where you but your flaw is like super. It's just like right in line with the rest of your character.
Yeah, we have a character in my current campaign who's playing a drug addict, and
Yeah.
his flaw is that he likes to get high in highly stressful encounters
Hmm.
and situations.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think that's fascinating.
I love
Yeah.
it. Anytime we came up with a system where he would have to roll a will save, a wisdom saving throw, and to see whether or not he takes up his blunt and starts smoking in stressful situations because he wanted to try and kick the habit. And
Yeah.
props to Justin as a dungeon master for being open to that because it's led to so many fun roleplay moments. And even in
And I think yeah.
situations where he's like using other things to fuel his addiction while he's avoiding smoking. It's so funny.
And I think it's really interesting too because like I guess if you look at it like if his character was like his flaw was that he used to be a drug addict, that's not nearly as interesting as like he's recovering. And that's sort of like one thing that's I think Justin was saying too about the flaws is like I think it's really cool and I think it like can help a lot if your flaw is like in action that's like your character is either like overcoming or it's like it's something that's like constantly like nagging at them, you know? And then I think that
But
is a
isn't
lot
it
more interesting.
also the things that are imperfections that make us interesting? Isn't it
Absolutely.
our imperfections
Absolutely.
that make us attractive, to
Uh-huh.
others in
Yeah.
our lives? It's like there's some song, there's so many songs, there's infinite songs about talking about singing about their partner's imperfections and their
Yeah.
beautiful brokenness and things like that. So I think,
Hmm.
yeah, it makes sense that sometimes those are the things uh that are good, that are like interesting and fun about a character, and that you want to, I played a barbarian, a
Right.
totem bear barbarian orc who was indeed raised by bears. And how I decided to
Oh,
play that
wonderful.
was that he just truly didn't understand, humanoid lifestyle things and decisions. Like, he wore
Mm.
clothing, but only because his, fiance forced him to. Um,
Yeah.
he just didn't care for like what was considered polite or whatever. So he wasn't rude. He just had like no understanding of typical procedure when it came to, the civilities of life
Yeah.
and niceties and the correct way of saying things and things like that.
Mm.
Um,
My God,
right.
I can
So
imagine any dinner situation must have been like horror story for your party.
I played him in a solo campaign with a dungeon master who was practicing, DMing, and I was like, yeah, sure, I got you, man. Like, let's do this.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think like one of the scenes that played out in that character's story is, he left the forest for the first time, just out of curiosity, and wandered into a wheat mill, and there was a donkey pulling around a mill stone, and he was like, "Oh wow, this donkey is kind of incapacitated. Nice," and he just, attacked him and started eating him.
Oh god.
And then the farmer comes in because he's like, "What is that sound?" And there's this, naked orc eating this donkey. And then he like looks up at the guy, and he's like, growling at him, and then the guy is upset and is trying to explain like, what are you doing here and stuff, and like grabs a pitchfork, and he doesn't speak common or Orcish or anything. He speaks
Yeah.
bear. And so with much difficulty trying to communicate, the orc, my character eventually understands, oh, you're upset because you were gonna eat this donkey. And so then he's like, oh, do you want to share?
Yeah.
And so he's like trying to share the donkey with the guy who's sad because this is like the family donkey that they've had pulling the mill for the past 5 years or whatever. Anyway, eventually he understands the wrong that he's done with much work, which is explained by the daughter that he falls in love with, and he agrees to become the donkey for the family until they can afford to buy a new one.
Oh.
So he agrees to work off his labor and eventually falls in love with the daughter, and then they become a family.
Wow.
And he eventually learns how to speak common. So he speaks really like roughly and whatever, but he's not unintelligent. He's just learning.
Right.
So I had so much fun leaning into that way of thinking. There was a part in the campaign where my son was kidnapped by cultists. And I didn't know that at the time. It's just your son hasn't come back in time, right? You can dig into these kind of things in a solo campaign.
Definitely.
And my character is whittling on a front porch, and he's just like, I'm like, all right, I just wait for him to come. I just sit on the porch, and it's like, but he usually comes back at 5, and dinner's in any minute. And he's not here. It's very atypical. And I was like, yeah, I just wait. It's like I'm a bear man. Like I he's probably doing something, and then I wait and I wait and I wait, and it's like, okay, it's getting dark, and I'm like, okay, I'll go look for him. So then I started to look for him, and I'm like sniffing around at the ground and stuff, and doing investigation, survival, perception stuff, Eventually find his blood, and I'm like, ooh, so I'm like really alarmed. So I find the cultist in a cave. There's 2 children being ready to be sacrificed. One's my son, and one is this random child. And I kill the cultists, and then one of the cultists is like crawling away but not dead, and I like scolding my son for being captured. Like, you need to be stronger. You need to be a better bear. Go kill that man. My son is like crying, like, oh, Dad, but I'm like, here, put the axe in your hand and go chop at the back of his head. You gotta be a man.
Yeah.
I don't want it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I break his neck. And then the other kid the DM is like, are you gonna rescue the other child? I'm like, it's not my cub.
It's not my cub.
Not my problem.
Yeah. And then he's like, okay, so he role plays that my son is like, don't leave my friend behind. And I'm like, ugh. So I rescue him, but I like drag him home in my mouth by his hair. And it's just, I just treated him like a bear the whole time. And then the cultists are doing some grand dark ritual that's going to destroy the land. And so I'm like, okay, well, we should move.
Yeah.
No, you're supposed to go fight the cultists. And I was like, yeah, but he's a bear, and they're like really, they're not territorial. Like, just move to a new forest. It's no big deal. Like, his biggest flaw is that he is raised by bears, and so he acted like a bear man.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it very often that people, when they are making characters, it's very often the opposite, where they want to play a character that sort of resembles an animal but acts in a very like human way. But I love that you took that in a very opposite direction.
Yes, a human that acts in a very animal way.
Think less Tarzan and more like well-trained dog.
Yeah. Or like the actual child who is like raised by wolves.
Yeah, absolutely.
The real account.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I love those kind of flaws. Here's a character sheet I have in front of me for Robert J. Kuntz, which we talked about in a previous episode.
Yep.
Oh yes.
Flaws. I assume the worst in people. I have no compassion for the dead. They're the lucky ones. I have an addiction. I am a purveyor of doom and gloom who lives in a world without hope. It's just super dark.
The post
like
emo.
Eeyore was what I was going for. If Eeyore
Yeah.
could be D&D, like, oh well, I guess we're all gonna die.
Can't say I didn't see this coming.
Yeah. Oh well, I guess I'll amputate my arm. Like just the most apathetic, most non-compassionate person possible. Just and I think like that's his core personality trait. It's
Yeah.
it's this awful feature. Josh, what about you? You have any characters with amazing flaws?
I did have I think one that's sort of like the example of the foil. He was a half dragon I played in a previous one of Just Sun's campaigns. And his flaw was sort of like he was, like haunted by like the horrors of his past. And his like he was sort of striving to become a more like peaceful, less violent, like slower to anger character. But what ended up happening is like he took the complete opposite path, and he went from like in the beginning he started as like a neutral character, and as it went on, his his efforts to like leave that way of life or that mentality kind of changed, and he sort of reverted back to being like a very evil, violent, angry character, and it was very interesting. It was like kind of a fun like dynamic that he kind of he sort it wasn't exactly a fall from grace, but it was like kind of a failure to redeem himself in a way. But it made the character very interesting.
If you had to write that flaw in your character sheet, what would it? How would you put it into words?
Um I think that is like he was very much like his thing was like there was like no pity, there was no such thing as pity, or like there was no acceptance of like failure or weakness, like he was kind of the kind of guy, if like he killed someone, he was like, well, it's their fault for not fighting back harder, was sort of who he
Very
became.
Klingon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he became very cling. Yeah, but I think like yeah, I liked how that character developed. But I've been reading this list. I think it's just like
If I
I
could
think
write
it's
that
good.
as a flaw, I would say I value strength above all. I do not tolerate weakness in any shape or form, and mercy is an abstract concept to me.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
that like the first half is more like an ideal, but the second half is more of a flaw.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the thing is like I think some in some ways like flaws and your ideals are sort of interchangeable
That's
sometimes,
true.
you know.
Yeah, they can
Yeah.
And
be.
I think that's sort of like I think it's good to sort of build it in a way that they are very like yin yang about how they interact with each other. But that's
Yeah.
it.
I think like I had that I have that warlock character again that I talked about in previous episode. Um, his flaw started with I always obey the law even when it causes misery.
Yeah.
But throughout the campaign, it actually changed and it updated to I refuse to see people for what they have done, only for who they could be if given the chance. And then
Yeah.
in parentheses, it says blind to obvious untrustworthy behavior. Right. And
Yes.
so that's
Yeah.
how it's a flaw because it's like this person is clearly going to betray me and I will trust them with the sacred artifact regardless.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly, which was frustrating, but it made the character all the more like interesting and fleshed out?
Definitely.
Yeah. And it also pretty, I wouldn't say it's all that far from where he started because he was very lawful and very good. He wasn't just lawful and annoying. He was a very good person.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, yeah.
he followed the law to the letter of the law rather to the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
Like and I think him evolving to being like, oh, I will intentionally trust the untrustworthy because I
Mm,
believe in who they could be rather than who they are or who they've been. And I
yeah.
believe that like I feel like it's still like I will trust people even if it causes me misery.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
sort of like but I think that's so good too, like because characters naturally evolve. Like I don't know, I think it's good, but as characters naturally evolve in the game, to like go back and look at your flaws and your bonds and your ideals and be like, what has changed for this character, and then write
Yeah.
it down. And I think that's like, it's just a useful thing to do so that like you have a more grounded thing to look at for your character, you know?
Yeah, I think my flaw in real life, maybe about 7 years ago, I could put down as I believe life is black and white. There's a clear right and wrong, and I am
Mm,
always right and you are always wrong.
Oh man,
yeah.
yeah.
Is absolutely how I operated.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And today I'd say it's exactly the same. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
And today I'd say that's gone from a flaw to an ideal because I found it to be true.
Yeah.
I don't know. Today, it's hard for me to see my flaw because it's today and it's in my blind spot at the moment, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you'll need another 7 years to
Yeah, come in 7 years from now, we'll do another episode and I can be like, oh, my flaw back then was.
There
just
you
as an
go.
update, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ben, what would you say your flaw in real life is?
Ooh, I would say that my flaw is, it always kind of has been, I have the inability to say no to someone I care about, especially
Yeah.
if I think that it in some way will impact our friendship.
That must mean we're not friends. You say no to me all the time. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's the opposite. It's you're the
I'm
one.
always worried that Ben is exceeding his own boundaries because of this.
Yeah.
It's something that I've done with just about everyone. I'm a very self-sacrificial person, and for me, it's
Yeah.
just it's so like second nature. Like, oh, of course, if they want me to do something, yeah, I'll do it. Like, maybe it won't
Yeah.
work. Maybe I've already double booked with someone else, but in the moment when I hear that, I'm like, no, I have to say yes. We're gonna do it. Let's go.
Yeah, I definitely. It's a great example of a flaw because it's both what I love and hate about you.
Yeah.
I love you for your imperfection and hate you for it too. Josh, I want to ask you what your flaw is because you're perfect. No, I'm just kidding. What's
true.
What would you say your flaw on earth?
I'm thinking about it. I
Or
think
was at least.
I think something I struggle with is like I don't want to do the most like pressing thing on my plate, but then also like if I start getting into it, like I can't stop. I think I'm very like either it's like I'm going to avoid it or like everything else is stopped so that I can like focus on this one thing.
Nothing can make you do it, and nothing can make you stop doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I would say that is my flaw.
Oh, I love
Oh
it.
my
That's
gosh.
good. See, now I'm thinking about this from like a D&D character's point of view, and that would be so fun to play. Like in the context, like if I was to take one of you guys' flaw and add it to a character, I feel like that'd be, that could lead to some really fun.
Yeah,
roleplay
feel free
situations.
to take any of these flaws to help
Yes,
for
go
your
ahead.
character. I think they could. I think honestly they could be interesting. Being a yes man could be very funny. Or like, I think there's even some that are like Just Sons where it's like you are so black and white about what is and what isn't.
Yeah.
And then also like if you want your flaw to be like hyper fixating, then you can take mine.
I think the best thing about my flaw is I was often quite wrong, but would go to any lengths to prove myself right or
Yeah.
to make people believe that I was right even though I was wrong, like to the point of gaslighting people because I was so committed to being right that even if I realized I was wrong halfway through, there was no backing out.
Yeah.
I just had to stick to it. It was awful. I'm so ashamed. Ben,
I know.
speaking of flaws, before we clean up our act and start talking about bonds and ideals, why don't you talk about today's sponsor?
I
Yeah.
would be happy to. So, today's sponsor is Junk Chuggers, the gelatinous cube cleanup service. When you've been grappled by a buildup of garbage, there's a way to strike back, and hard, with Junk Chuggers. With their highly trained and curated gelatinous cubes, they'll make your garbage disappear. Our clients have tons of trash, things like kitchen waste, packaging, corpses, yard waste, and more. Thankfully, with Junk Chuggers, there's almost nothing that can't be taken care of. Prestidigitation cleaning can only go so far nowadays, and it just takes so much time. But with Junk Chuggers, anything you mark as unwanted is out of there permanently. Our highly skilled team of trainers make sure that not only what you want gone gets gobbled, with no residual slime, guaranteed. But if you order with the promo code DRAGIN, you'll get your first 20 pounds dissolved for free with a cleanup of over 80 pounds. Junk Chuggers. To solve problems, we dissolve problems. Non-reactive substances like glass and crystal will not be dissolved. If your space has marble or limestone work of 30% or more, junk chuggers may not be suitable for you.
Yeah, I loved. I used to use junk chuggers a lot, but one time I was kind of in a rush and I didn't really, point out all of the items that to not be dissolved, and we lost the dog.
Oh, no.
God.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
man.
terrible. That's so terrible.
I found his dog tags though were quite clean.
I see.
Dog. You marked the dog tags, but then you were like, that'll probably just keep him away from the dog.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, you got to be a little bit specific. With
Yeah,
junk
you know what? I
chuggers.
will say, like, a lot of my adventuring buddies use this, and they say it's so useful. You go to a dragon's lair, you get the gold, but then it's like, there's the bones, there's, like, all this, like, all these useless magic items you don't want to take. And then you can just dissolve all of that.
Oh, wow,
And then just, like,
perfect.
move right in. I actually know some friends who are currently living out of old, like, dragon's caves, and that without junk chuggers, they say that would be cool. So I highly recommend.
Yeah, I hear that they have like a commune thing going on. Usually, they have a couple people living in a dragon's lair at a time, and they.
It's like a timeshare. Yeah,
Oh,
you can
okay.
you rent it out for part of the year while you're not adventuring, and then
Yeah,
I gotta get into.
I used junk chuggers once, long time ago, a couple thousand years back, and there was this. We had just cleared out this lich's lair, and it was absolutely disgusting, just filthy.
oh my god,
filthy,
yeah,
filthy.
a lich. Are you kidding me?
However, the bathrooms did have some beautiful marble work. But after junk chuggers came in through, everything was beautiful. Looked like the castle had been completely refurbished. But unfortunately, we lost the amazing marble countertops.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
the
You have to be so
trouble.
careful with those dissolvable stones.
Well, that's why junk chuggers specifically sets up their system to have you mark what they touch and what
Yeah.
they don't touch.
Yeah,
Yep,
that was
yep.
my fault because I didn't tell them. I just said do the whole castle, and they did
Yeah.
the whole castle.
Yeah, it's so easy. It's those little things you forget.
They even did the walls. They like got the gelatinous cubes to the top, and then they like went down the walls on the outside, cleaned the whole building. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. Especially with
they
those
really
lich's
do good
layers.
work.
You have all the scrawling on the
Yeah.
walls.
It went from
And the
looking like a
demonic
20,000-year-old castle to looking like a 2,000-year-old castle.
That's
yeah,
amazing.
night and day, night and day.
That's fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
man. Interior and exterior.
Yeah, man,
Oh my god.
beautiful, and it's cheap too.
Yeah, for the service they provide,
Yeah,
it's because they don't have to pay the gelatinous cube, which is
that
which
does
is what
help.
they have on a lot of those like goblin or cobalt based services. Is they,
yeah. I'm not.
gelatinous.
That's why we don't support those ones because
Yeah,
cubes are not sentient. Okay,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
don't support slavery here.
yep, yep.
Goblin Emporium. Those goblins are magically, sustainably sourced. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
it's a lot more
Yeah.
humane.
Bit of a gray area there.
Shout out to Goblin
man.
Emporium. You can hear about our offer for them on earlier episodes. I don't know if the
Yeah,
promo
earlier
code is still up, but definitely check this out.
Definitely check this. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I feel pretty bonded to junk chuggers.
God, that's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's really ideal the way they clean.
You guys need to
Bam.
stop.
Bam.
They take all their junk
Man.
and they let it sit in the background. Okay, no, seriously, what are we talking about next?
We kind of, I think, I don't know, personality traits. I'm not really sure. I feel like all of these things are personality traits, but on your
Yeah.
character sheet, there is a personality trait. I think a personality trait for me is something that I set up for my characters is the thing that when I go back and read, it's like, oh yeah, that's who my character is. That's how I should play him. Like,
Yeah.
kind of a quick line, not a huge biograph or something, but something you should read every time you sit down and play your character, just to remind you, right, that's who I am. Right, that's who I am.
Yeah. So useful.
For Sir Arthas Minithil, the Goliath undead warlock who thought he was a paladin, that I've talked about and will continue to talk about because he's my favorite character. His personality trait was I'm always polite and respectful.
Yeah.
Always, right? That keyword always polite and respectful. So whenever I played the character um in any scenario, I would do my best to be polite and respectful to everyone, including enemies. So, we killed enemies, I would say, rest in peace or something like that, or, I'm sorry that things ended this way, or when we were dealing with bandits or something, I would, introduce myself even if I thought combat was imminent. Always, always, always. And the few and that's what made it such a powerful character trait for that character, is because I stuck to
Hmm.
it so consistently.
Yeah.
When he wasn't polite, it really hit hard. It was like, oh
Yeah. It
my
was like,
gosh, did he just like yell? Did he just snap? Did he curse? Like, oh my gosh. Like, it's kind of like when the silent kid in the back of the class starts talking,
yeah.
everyone listens.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That doesn't
exactly.
happen if you're flip-flopping all over the place with your character's personality, where,
Yeah.
so I think personality traits should be something quick, little line that you can read that kind of brings you centered to that core behavioral type. And I
Hmm.
don't I don't know, that could change, but I think that should be something you try to stick to for as much as you can throughout the
Yeah.
campaign.
It's true. And it could be something that's like, it doesn't necessarily like connect to like, oh, this is what my character's striving for. Because then it just is like, it is a really good thing to like center yourself, be like, okay, yeah, this is who my character is. And it's always just like your character gets into an interaction, and then you can just remember, be like, oh yeah. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Like Tony Stark, narcissist.
Yeah,
Trait.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He
Boom.
thinks he's the best.
Consistent through line. Even when
Yeah.
he's having, PTSD flashbacks, he's still being a narcissist.
Yeah, he's still like joking about it and like funny guy.
Oh, so good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting because I personally myself, I haven't very often with my characters in the past, I haven't really delved too much into the personality traits as like a blurb reflecting my character. Very often, I've just gone and tried to find something that's interesting to add to my character. Just looking at the personality traits table. But from what you guys are saying, that makes so much more sense. And honestly, I feel like that's something that can be, added to and changed while you're going through a campaign, because I mean,
Yeah.
at least altered in a way that makes more sense, because a lot of the time, characters change and evolve as you play them. How do you guys feel
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. I think that's like, I do like that. And I think it's sort of a different topic, but well, I don't know. Actually, I'll see Justin if you have an opinion on that.
Yeah. I think it's definitely kind of, if you want, for me, it's always been the approach of consistency.
Hmm.
I've definitely, that's what I used it for, and that's how I understood it. Um, I've had less clearly defined characters. But that was usually because they were kind of insane, and the clearly defined characteristic was that they were insane, and
Hmm.
inconsistency was consistent and on brand.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really need like a thing to remind me, because it's like, yeah, they're just insane. So like everything goes. Um, Kind of loony maniac or lunatic kind of. I was like luniac.
Looney Tunes.
A Luniac.
Uh, right. So if we look at Robert J. Kuntz, I think his is an example of one that's uh, definitely could be rewritten to be more clear. So right now it says, I don't talk about the things that torment me. I'd rather not burden others with my curse. I put no trust in divine being. So I would reword that to be something more specific, like I don't want to I don't share my burdens and my pain with others, is I don't want others to care. Like I don't want to stress
Right.
people out. I don't want to burden them with my worries and problems. And then I'd rather not burden others with my curse. It's like I'm not looking for help to lift my curse. Like,
Hmm.
I'm trying to do it alone. And then the last part of, I don't put trust in divine beings. It's like, well, what if gods aren't a big part of your campaign? What if that's not a thing? I say it's like, I would extend that to, I don't put trust in divine beings and do-gooders.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Hmm.
Like, I don't trust the good. The good-hearted, I think, are swindlers. right?
I
Which
see.
makes
Yeah,
sense
yeah.
for his backstory because his mother was bleeding out and dying, and he went to get help, and a vampire was like, "Oh, I'll help you," and then killed his mom.
Oh my
So it's
God.
like, you know,
Yeah, if
it's
there's ever a way to like lose faith in all beings that are willing to help, that's the way to do it.
It's when your family members are murdered.
Christ.
Yeah.
Robert Kuntz is the best example of like a double background because it's like, oh, I killed my parents, but they actually are both still in the game. So if you want to kill them again, you can as a
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
so
That's how
good.
you can have the best of both worlds. You can have your tragic backstory, but also have those family members to
Yeah. I think you
call
can
to.
take the personality traits any way you want it, though. You can just put your kind of less
Mhm.
clear stuff that's not so like, oh, Bond ideal flaw. You can put your kind of more vague stuff about you and your character. Um, but I
Yeah,
don't want to spend too much time on personality traits because we know you don't either.
yeah.
Great. Let's
And
move on.
also, the one thing I wanted to say is like a lot of this stuff is like interchangeable, you know. So like you could take a flaw or a bond and use that as your personality trait, just so you have like more to look with, more to look at.
Sure.
I think a lot of this stuff is like interchangeable, where you can like take a personality trait even and like let it be a flaw,
Sure. Definitely.
like I have a joke for every occasion, especially when that occasion for humor is inappropriate. That's a personality trait, but that could easily be a flaw.
Definitely. I can see that there's a very strong flaw. Like, no
Yeah.
seriousness in all serious situations. That can
Yeah.
lead to some bad times.
I know people who like constantly laugh and giggle in intensely stressful situations.
Yes,
So it
yeah,
makes
like
them look like they're not taking things seriously, but they're intensely nervous.
yeah,
Right,
yeah. That's
yeah.
just how they like how they act when they're nervous.
Oh,
And if you
so
don't know
good.
that, yeah, it looks so like
Yeah,
bad.
like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
great flaw. Yeah, so let's talk about ideals.
Mm-hmm.
Josh,
Mm-hmm.
ideally, what would you put down as an ideal for an ideal character who's dealing with his ideals?
Dealing with his ideals.
You were waiting.
Um,
How long were you waiting to say that one?
I just came up with it on the spot because I'm a comedy god.
Oh my
Look at this guy. He's just operating on a whole different level.
So jealous. That's not
Um,
fair.
I I I wonder. I think it would depend on his alignment because the ideals are very
Yes.
alignment oriented.
Yes.
So that is important to like recognize your character's ideal. And
Yeah.
one thing I want to say is very often I will write an ideal bond flaw for my character. Like I'll write one down because oftentimes, and I think
Yeah.
I don't quite find the one that like is exactly what I'm thinking for my character because I think I'm very backstory oriented.
Yeah. I'm like
So,
you with
but-
that. I'll pick a Bond ideal flaw and stuff from the list
yeah.
that's provided, and then edit it to be more
Yeah,
specific
like
to my
rewrite it.
character.
Same here.
That's
yeah.
also what I
Trying
like
to
to do.
stick to the same, like the heart of what the last person, the person who created the list to choose from. Because I do want to reflect, also because I have my own background, but I did pick, the soldier background or whatever. And I
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
want that to kind of be reflected, and I want to stay true to the kind of the spirit of that background that I had chosen. Otherwise, I would have completely started from scratch.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, so with ideal, like I think, yeah, if you're like, okay, I already know I'm lawful good, then you're like, great, I'll just pick. You can have more than one bond or ideal or flaw. Like with Robert Kuntz, he's got 4 flaws.
Yeah.
I think I just clicked on all of the flaws that were available.
You like selected everything and just moved
Yes.
it over.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. I'll take the lot of them. So I think if you already know your alignment, I think it's great to pick the 2 things that are already in your alignment. So if it's like, oh, chaotic and good, so I'll click on chaotic and good, and then you've got the 2 ideals that are chaotic and good, and then you can tweak them to be a little bit more catered to your background. Or just click on the 2 that and just leave it that. Or you can pick one, whichever the one that's your character's more good than lawful, or more lawful than good, or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
On the flip flop, if you don't know what your character's alignment are, reading those can give you an idea of what it should be.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. That is a good like and I recommend that too cuz like what I'll often, and I recently started doing this because I never could find the right traits, but if you just while you're making your character look up, just go like on Google, look up list of all personalities, because then you can get them from all the different books, and then just kind of copy them to whatever like, character sheet building software you're using.
That's
Um,
interesting.
but on the topic of like, if you are on that same topic, of like you're writing your own, it's I think really good to start. I recommend starting with one, but also with the ideals specifically, all of them kind of work off of a 1 or 2 word like structure. So it's like faith, tradition, charity, and then a little description. So I
Mhm.
think it's good to like pick one of those words and then build off of it.
Yeah.
A character I'm working on right now is like he's like the last. I don't know. It's just like a character idea I'm working
Go
on,
tell
but
us about it.
it's
I want to
like
hear more.
well, so he's like I don't know, he's like the last knight of like an ancient kingdom. I'm building a ghost character because I've always wanted to play a ghost.
Ooh.
But
Nice.
he's so his thing is like tradition, and his like ideal is that he is unwilling to let his like his like kingdom, his god and his tradition die, because like
Even though
he's
he
from a
did.
kingdom that's long forgotten and like a
Yeah.
god that's no longer worshipped, but he's
He's
like
he's also not
un,
willing to let himself die.
not yeah, and he's like
Yeah.
so abhorrent to that tradition. He's like not he can't let it go. So I think that's like that's a lawful, but that there's one that is like that already in the ideals, but I kind of want to rewrite it a little bit, but it's tradition, the ancient traditions of worship and sacrifice must be preserved and upheld. But that can be like, I would alter this text, but that like
Definitely.
single word of tradition I think is the thing that I'm looking for.
Are you talking about bonds right now?
No, that's ideals. That's an ideal.
Really? Okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
But that's
I-
sort of what I mean. Like they're also interchangeable.
Yeah.
I also like how the ideals, the ones that they have outlined in the player's handbook, come like they indicate what alignment usually follows these. Like they'll have good, lawful, chaotic,
Yeah.
evil, neutral, to kind of help give a little bit of a push in a direction. Another thing that I really love about ideals is because I feel like they're the ones that have the most variation between how easy you can see them. Like for a paladin, their ideal is going to be so openly overt and shared and like given to
Yeah.
everyone who they meet. It's like super, super clear. But for like maybe a rogue character or even like someone who's more secretive or maybe even evil, they still have an ideal, but that ideal is very, very subverted, very covert. And like only if you're really looking for it will you catch that ideal. And I think that that's something also to keep in mind is like, how is your character going to express their ideal? Will it be open? Will they be doing things in secret to kind of follow their own paths?
Yeah. I think the word ideals though is also pretty clear in the sense that like this is what your character holds as an ideal. Like this is
Yeah.
what they believe the ideal person or world is like, and these are
Yeah.
the ideals that they uphold as the good, the right, the correct way of living, correct way of doing things. These are their ideals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're wondering like what's the difference between ideal and bond and flaw, they all sound like similar just descriptive features of my character, and it's like, well, that's why ideals have your an alignment there because it reflects what your character believes is ideal. Right? So if
Yeah.
your character is chaotic neutral or neutral good, it's because they believe that that's the right way of living life. That's why they're living life that way.
Yeah.
Right? So the lawful good paladin is he believes in upholding the law and justice and order and goodness and righteousness and holy and divine, right? And so I think that's why it's so easy to know, oh yeah, well, paladin is lawful something.
Right.
He's going to be lawful evil, lawful good, maybe lawful neutral if he's like a lawyer.
Yeah.
Lawyer paladin.
Yeah.
That is such a good idea. A lawyer paladin. That is hilarious.
I
And
am
just a
here
lawful
to
neutral.
uphold the justice system.
It's just a,
To uphold
those
justice. To
for
protect
my
those. Yes. To protect those that are paying me.
to protect those who cannot protect themselves very well and would end up in prison without me.
He's like a public defender. That is a hilarious idea.
instead of casting smite, he casts object.
I object.
Yeah, I think that that sums up ideals pretty clearly.
Yeah.
If we look at the ideals of my Goliath Paladin Warlock, not a multi-class, just screwed up in the head.
Yeah.
His is
Yeah.
his, and this evolved. In the beginning, it started as good, and it stayed the same, and then lawful. And I think lawful was like justice must always be upheld,
Even when it's
and
others.
fire and wrath to those who ignore it, or something lawful, right? And then so it was greater good. Our lot is to lay down our lives in the defense of others, good. And then it changed from lawful to neutral, and then now it says the truth is personal. Ideals aren't worth killing over and going to war for, which is like the opposite of what he believed when he started, because
Yeah.
his kingdom before he died was literally went to war because of ideals.
Yeah.
Because of what they believed in. It was a religious war. And
Yeah.
so it's like it literally 360'd as he realized in his own life, in his the duality. He abhorred undead creatures and thought there couldn't be an undead creature that could be good, and they all must be smote and destroyed. And then when he discovered that he himself was an undead, yet had done good things, it just rocked his whole perspective on his world.
Yeah.
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 And changed everything for him. And he's just like, oh my gosh. And then,
What a moment.
yeah, it was crazy. That character growth moment for that lawful good paladin was because that character was the closest I had ever played to Jussun, like who I am. I saw myself as lawful good in real life. That's what my name literally means. It's Justice Son. It's not just son. It's Justice Son. So like that's what my parents says it means is Justice Son, the son of justice. So yeah, I that's why I was so black and white. And it was actually, my perspective had been shifting into the gray of life and how there is good in the gray as well and all of that, and how that character moment, me and Josh, we were playing off of each other. My character had just realized that he was an undead, which was greatly shook his faith and belief in what was right and wrong in the world. Is now there's this gray area that forced his way into his life, and he's like, either I kill myself and uphold my beliefs, or acknowledge the reality that I am a good person who've done good things, even though I'm an undead. What do I do? And ultimately, he chose to stay alive at the behest of his patron, whispering in his ears, which was his son all along, but he didn't know that at the time. And then
Right.
when he was talking to your character, Josh, and we had this debate on the war and what it meant and who was right and wrong, and his character realized we are both right, but from our own perspectives.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also realized that in life, that in real life, I realized, oh, wow, you can both be right. We can both live good and right lives with contradicting beliefs. However, the way we enact our beliefs, we can both still have a positive impact on our own lives and others. And therefore, all I must do with my beliefs is live them.
Wow.
And I will love and live others and let them live. Right. And as long as their beliefs are not hurting others and they are not hurting themselves, it doesn't matter whether they agree with me. If I believe this is the right way to do it, all I need to do is focus on what I'm doing and do it. I should do it. Rather than wasting my time trying to convince other people to do what's right, I should just do what's right myself first. And that was such a pivotal thing. And I was like, okay, I need to write this down on my character sheet so I don't forget this moment.
Yeah.
But also so that I can roleplay it next week when I forget everything because we go to work and take showers
and
and
D&D
sleep.
folks.
So I wrote it down. And it's like, yeah, the truth is personal. Ideals are not worth killing over or going to war for. And now he's neutral. So he went from lawful good to neutral good. And so did
Yeah.
Justin.
Such a yeah. Yep. And that's why we play D&D, folks, right there. A life-changing experience.
I am
All right, let's
Through
so
the discussion
proud.
of a Goliath and gnome.
I know we're gonna
But
move
yeah, that
forward.
was such a
I know we're gonna move forward, but I just want to say I'm so proud to have been the DM for that campaign and to watch that change happen.
Yeah.
That
was a
such
great moment.
Strong sense of pride in that. Oh man.
yeah.
Thank
That
you,
is
man.
making me miss role playing with Justin. I wanna do another campaign where we're a team again, because that was so great. Because our characters always had like whenever there was like any downtime, we always had something to like do,
Yeah.
you know?
Something to chat about.
Yeah, man. We should write a book. So let's jump into bonds real quickly. Just kind of lightly tap on them like a bongo.
Bam, bam, bam.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
Bonds is always the one that I am kind of confused about, you know? Because sometimes it's like how you interact with the outside world, but then other times it's not really like that, you know?
Sometimes it's
So
a
I think
particular
it's like-
person that you have. that
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
connected to.
Sometimes it's like you have a specific opinion about a specific person, and sometimes it's like this is how I interact with people in general. So bonds always confuse me. But I don't know if you guys have any good advice about bonds.
Well, I actually for my characters here, I have a couple of them. I got my notes as well. Bonds played a really big part in my characters, especially my most recent one, which is
Bonds.
Ori.
James Bonds.
That's not wrong, Bonds. Because a lot of what my character is based around is this order that he's a part of. So I worked with Jasun, who is the DM of our campaign, to develop this secret society called the Maker's Hand, which is an order of monks that are committed to preserving art in whatever shape, way, shape, or form that it comes. So it's comprised of like writers and architects and designers, and it's this whole secret society that my character was born into and raised with. And so that character's bond, I'll just pull it up here, is let's see. Well, actually, it was around the base text that I pulled it from was, I seek to preserve a sacred text that my enemies consider heretical and seek to destroy. And so that bond refers to sort of not just a particular item in my campaign, but more the magical like art and masterworks in as a whole that my order seeks to save. Yeah. And so that was constantly in the back of my mind, was like, I was always looking to see who else was connected to this organization that I was a part of, looking to see if, like, always finding appreciation for art and making sure that it was in some sort of like safe set of hands. And so it was a huge part of my character. It still is.
Yeah, I think it's a good example. I think I would say bonds are kind of like the stuff that your character, the stuff that someone would only get to know about your character if they knew them for an extended period of time, right? Personality traits, you're going to meet that. As soon as you meet them, you'll get to know their personality trait pretty quickly. And then their bonds and ideals. I mean, so their ideals are the kind of thing that you, again, are going to become kind of apparent relatively, without you could just be still acquaintances and roughly know what someone's, ideals are, and their flaws, it might take a week or so to get to know those better. But I feel like someone's bonds are just kind of beliefs that they have that are not like greatly defining who they are, but just kind of things that they think are true, and the kind of stuff. It's like almost almost like what political party they follow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
These days you can know that pretty quick, but back in there was a little more subtlety to it. Back in the
Right.
day.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like I have a bunch of them for Sir Arthas. They are my faith. My truth is my faith. I fight for them. That's a new one. I mean, I didn't start that way. I fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Those who fight beside me are those worth dying for. I would go to great lengths to help someone heal their past. My son died because of war. That's it. I don't know what that means, but I will never leave a friend behind. Right. So like those are kind of things that you'll get to know in his actions, or maybe through deep conversations late at night or something like that, through a greater time of spending time with him. Right.
Yeah.
You know, you don't meet someone and go, hi, I would never leave a friend behind. You know,
Right. Absolutely.
if you fight beside me, I'll die for you. Like that's not something that would come up, but it does come up,
when you're fighting
as,
side by
as
side.
you get as you get to know them, right?
Definitely.
That's really interesting. That's a good way to describe it. That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would
Like,
say.
and go ahead, Ben.
Sorry. I would say that bonds are the way that your character relates to the world, whether it's a particular person or a group of people that they hold dear, or, in the same way with Sir Arthas, his connection to his order. And, sorry, what was the first one that you mentioned, Justin? Your first bond on your sheet?
My faith is my truth.
Yeah,
My truth
exactly.
is my faith.
My
Same
truth
difference.
is my faith. So other members of your faith, your connection to your God, like that is a way, a sort of, a way that you look into the world from. Like, I can't find the word for it right now, but it's the way that you relate to people and
Yeah.
connect. I would say is reflects bonds.
Yeah.
How you interact with the world. That's a good way to, because then I think they make a bit more sense.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
I think it's nice to have kind of an idea of how these things present, because then you know where to put them or what you want to put in these areas, or you can put things that you'd be excited to kind of, how can I figure out how to role play these things?
Yeah.
Definitely. I love things like that.
Yeah, Robert J. Kuntz bonds are a terrible guilt consumes me. I hope that I can find redemption through my actions. Right. So even though he's very, he acts very aloof and he's very distant and very melancholy and very solemn,
Solemn, yes.
Solemn.
Solemn, very solemn. He does have this desire to change and to evolve beyond that, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of, it's not exactly an ideal, as his ideal is a lawful ideal, but yeah, he has this desire to grow, and he's incredibly guilty and ashamed of himself and his past. So I think again, you'd get to know that over a long period of time. It's not like, hi, nice to meet you. I'm terribly torn up about my past.
And I work in finance. Yeah. I think that's a good way. It's a good way to look at it.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Josh, do you have a character that with a bond that stands out in a way that you're like, oh yeah, that was an interesting thing to try to.
One that came to mind right away is my bugbear ranger that I'm currently playing. His bond was my family, my clan, or tribe is the most important thing in my life, even when they are far away. And that's sort of manifested in like this like strict, it's like his kind of family and tribe, or it's sort of like kind of a pseudo religious sort of like community / like company or order. So it's like he's very like abhorrent. He's like very like strict about the tenets of his religion and culture, and like he had before his brother was killed his brother was one of the characters that was playing with us, and he died in combat. But before that, he was like so stark about like always protecting and providing for and like being aware and conscious of his brother. And actually, there's another character that's playing that I think he's sort of his name is he's Zurich, but Zurich is sort of taken as like his surrogate son almost, or not son, but surrogate brother, that he like kind of seeks to take care of um, and look after. So it's sort of like he, yeah, and I think that's always like helpful when I'm role playing that he's like he kind of has this duty feeling, like the feeling of duty, like that an older brother would, like feel.
Definitely.
Yeah. One of my bonds is to close this tavern on time.
Oh
and
God,
to
damn
get
it!
you guys out of here.
Whatever. All right.
All right, we're leaving. We're leaving.
Thanks for the
We're
drink,
leaving.
though. My headache is gone, and my throat
Yeah.
feels a little bit warmer.
Nice.
So.
It'll come back really hard in the morning.
Oh God.
You'll hear the screams of war.
You feel as though your head has been hit with a mace. And,
Yeah. Yeah. You might have vivid dreams of the horrors of
I
war.
knew I shouldn't have ordered the skull mace tonight, but
You'll either get a new flaw or a new bond.
But this will be a life-altering experience tonight. So have a good time.
thank you, thank you, much appreciated. All right.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, you guys great. Get in here.
I'm leaving.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you want more, you can go. There's Spotify. You can listen to us on Spotify. We post the exact same episodes we post on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, you're like, yeah, what? That's because we also post the exact same episodes on YouTube. If you want to watch them on YouTube instead.
Bam.
Our VODs are also on Twitch, but why would you watch that there? And just live on Twitch. If you like watching these live, you can do that. That's the thing we do. We go live on Saturdays around 6, if roughly.
Yes, Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern Standard, yeah.
Roughly.
Vaguely. Early. Sort of.
Between 6 and 6:30. That's the accurate time. But anyways.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and you guys get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm going.
Come on.